So in this video we are going to work on a simple project I call the guess game. So it's going to be a game where you select the system generates a random number and you are to guess the number. So if your guess is higher, the system gives you a message to select a smaller number, and if your guess is smaller, it gives you a message to select a bigger number. So I've prepared the HTML part of the code and the CSS. So this video is not focused on HTML and CSS, so we're just going to use it for the interface. So our focus is majorly on the JavaScript, so you can see that the JavaScript file is empty. So in the HTML file I have linked the CSS that is used. That's this simple CSS here, nothing much, and I've linked the JavaScript file as well. This way we're going to be writing the code in this video. So let me run this. I'm also using a live server, an extension by VS Code. So if you don't have it set up on your VS Code, it's simple to install. Come to your extension section. Here you can see this icon when you install your VS Code. If you haven't installed your VS Code, by the way, you can Google it. So open your browser. I think in one of my videos, in my earlier videos, I showed you how you can install and set up VS Code. So you can Google it and download and install VS Code on your system. So after installing VS Code, you can click on this extensions icon and search for live server like this. For me, I've installed it already. But if you haven't installed it, once you click on it, you will see a button here to install, or you can see a button like this. You just go ahead to click on it to install. I've already installed it on my system, so I don't have that button. But if you haven't installed it, you should see a button like this where you can click to install it. Right, so after installing, you should have a button like this or an option like this to go live with your project. So let's click on it. Okay, so this is the interface we're going to be using. This is basically simple HTML and CSS. Like I said, that is not our focus for this video, so that has been done already. So we're going to focus on the JavaScript section of this project, and the code will also be made available on GitHub, so the link will be included in the description of the video. So check the description for the link to the GitHub code of this project. Okay, so right now you can see that nothing is happening. If I click, it just submits the form and refreshes the page. So let's have this working. So we have to write let's get it to work. We have to write our JavaScript code to get it to work. So we open up our JavaScript code. So before writing our JavaScript code, there are some things we need to take note of. We have our form here, and we have a form ID. We have we are using the post method to submit. We have an input, which is where the user will type in a value, and we have a button where they will submit. We are going to use the JavaScript alert to trigger a message. So if we have something like alert in JavaScript, this is a message. Automatically you see we have the message here. So this is what we're going to use to display message to the user. Right. Okay, so the first thing I want us to do is to add an event listener to this form. JavaScript is an event-driven language. So when things happen on your web page, a lot of events are triggered. In fact, anything on a web page is an event. So if I have a web page like this, if I click here, that is an event. So this is focused right now, so this is a focused event. And if I type into this input box, this is an event. So anything that happens on a web page, if you scroll, that is an event as well. If you click anywhere on your page, it's an event. If you click a button, it's an event, right? So any activity done on a page is an event captured by JavaScript. So when designing a web application, you take advantage of that to make your page interactive. So when a user scrolls, you can take advantage of the scrolling event to maybe load more data or do something depending on your project. So in this project, we're going to utilize the submit event to get the value the user entered and compare it with the randomly generated value by in our game. So we're going to attach an event listener to this form. So like I mentioned, events are generated when we perform activities on a web page. So in this case, when this form is submitted, so the user is going to submit this form by clicking on this button. You can see the form has been submitted, but right now we have written the code to take advantage of that submission of that event, right? So we're going to listen to that event. So to be able to utilize it, we have to listen to it. So you have to write a code that will listen to that event whenever the button is whenever the event is triggered. So whether we listen to it or not, automatically JavaScript emits that event. So for us to know when a user submits the form, we have to listen to the event. So that's the first thing we're going to do in our JavaScript code. So the ID of this form is form, and this is what we're going to use to create an event listener for the form. So we'll come here. So first we're going to do this document get element by. So I'm still going to do a video on DOM manipulation, which deals with handling JavaScript and HTML. So I'm going to treat all of this in detail. So for now, I just want us to get to use some of the concepts we have treated in JavaScript, and we can only do that through a project. So don't worry if you don't understand what is happening here. We're still going to have a video that will explain all this. So we're going to select the form here using this code. So document.get element by ID. So we take note of this ID here, form. So we want to select the form ID, and we will use this add event listener. So we are going to attach an event listener to this form, Now when you are attaching an event listener, the first thing we need to provide is the name of the event. In this case is a submit event, so we're dealing with a submit event. And next we want to provide the function that will be run when this event is triggered. So we're going to provide an arrow function here. Right, so in this function we are going to write all our code. So first let's do this. So let's display message on the screen that the form has been submitted, like this. By the way, if you are using this live server, you don't need to refresh your code. Normally when you update your code like this, you have to refresh the page to for the new code to take effect. But when you are using live server, automatically that live server handles that, so you don't need to refresh your page. So if we go ahead and submit this form now, you say we get a message here that says the form has been submitted. Good. And you can see that it goes ahead to submit the form and refreshes the page. In our case, we don't want that to happen, so there's a way we can prevent that behavior in JavaScript. So let's see how we can do that. So to do that, we take in an argument here into this function, and this argument e automatically is going to be provided by JavaScript. So whenever the event is triggered, we're going to get this object e that will contain some information for us. So let's see. Okay, let's see what we can do with this. So to be able to prevent the default behavior, when we click on this button and it submits the form and refreshes the page, we want to prevent that default behavior by JavaScript. So we using this object, the object gives us access to a function we can call, which is prevent default. So this prevents the default behavior of refreshing the page when the form is submitted. So right now, if I click on this to submit, we get this alert message. But if I close, you see now that the form doesn't get refreshed, which is good. That's what we want to have in our project. So next, we are going to generate a random number, but we want to do that outside this event listener, outside this function for the event listener. Right, so by the way, we can also have our function defined outside here, just to make things clear. So let me create a function. So I'll create an arrow function. I'll call this fun submitted, like this, and I'll call the function here. So instead of having it here, so this works as well. So to be sure this works, I'm going to, this is a message, so display message. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, Okay, something is wrong somewhere. Okay, in order not to waste our time, I'm going to revert back to the previous code. I wanted to keep things simple, but it seems we won't go that route. Okay, so alert once more. And then we have our alert back. Good. So we want to generate a random number that will be used in our game. So we call this value. So this is a value the user is going to guess in the game. So we say we're going to use the math. So math has the math class has a lot of functions we can use. We're going to use the random. And we can see a description of this function. So it says this returns a number between 0 and 1. So if you have this so I'm going to print the value here so that we can see what is generated. Okay, so we can see we have 0.69 something. Anytime you refresh this page, a new number will be generated. So we have 0.4 something. If you refresh again, we have a new number generated. So that's what the random function in the math class does. So it always gives us a random number between 0 and 1. Now we want to have a random number between 0 and 100. So to be able to achieve that, we are going to multiply this by 100. So with this, we can have a random number between 0 and 100. If I click this now, we have 92 point something. If we refresh again, we have 70 point something. If we refresh again, we have 17 point something.